No vegan diet, no vegan powers!
Back in 2010, the movie Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, based on the acclaimed book series by Brian Lee O'Malley, was released upon the world. Scott Pilgrim is the story of a young man who wants to win the heart of Ramona Flowers. In order to do so, he has to defeat her 7 evil exes. And to go with the movie, Ubisoft had a tie-in game ready to go. For the uninitiated, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, is a classic side-scrolling beat-em-up with RPG elements. The game consists of 7 levels, referred to as worlds, and at the end of each world there is a fight with one of the 7 evil exes. The game was released on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 on August 10th, 2010, just 3 days before the release of the movie. However, in late 2014, the game would be delisted from all digital stores, leaving the game unable to be bought and downloaded. So for 6 long years, the game has been unplayable, aside from those who bought the game initially when it was originally released. Until now. That's right. As of Thursday, January 14th, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, is finally back after all these years. The game was released on Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, PC, and Google Stadia. And not only that, but Limited Run Games has also put up pre-orders for a physical edition of the game. So we never have to worry about it disappearing again. I, for one, am very excited. And to help celebrate the return of this game, we're going to be taking a look at some cut content from the original release of the game. So, without further ado, let's go! Stéphane Boutin, the game's background artist and graphic supervisor, posted on his Bēhance page about the development of the game. And with this, he included sketches and descriptions of stuff that was meant to be in the game, but ended up not making the cut in the end. So real quick, I want to go over the game's development before we jump into the cut content. The game was a challenge for the team behind it. They worked on the project for 6 months in Montreal, where the team was poorly managed and had to deal with tools that weren't suited for what they wanted to do with the game. As the team got larger and larger, the game would inevitably get put on a month-long hold in December of 2009. After the holidays, production resumed as a small core team moved to Chengdu Studio in China to finish the game. With the production being so troubled, it's no shock that there would end up being cut content. With that out of the way, let's look at what didn't make it into the game. I'll be going level by level in an effort to keep things in some sort of order. But before we jump into the worlds, there's a few odds and ends to mention that don't really fit any of the levels themselves. Before every boss fight in the game, character portraits are shown depicting the current playable character as well as the boss character. After going through the portraits that Stéphane posted, I noticed that a few, like Ramona and Steven, actually show their bottom torsos, whereas the portraits for those characters in the final game stop just before the waist. There is, however, one portrait that was not in the final game. One for the mid-level boss in World 3 against Envy and Lynette. Why this was removed is unknown, but I feel it may have been to keep the flow of the game going, since Todd's boss fight is immediately after this fight. Speaking of Todd, there's this image of Scott flying towards Todd during their fight. This was actually concept art for a shoot-'em-up that Stéphane and Paul Robertson, the game's lead animator, considered during the month the project was on hold, as an option to save the work that had been done and still deliver a product. In terms of basic enemies, Stéphane posted these sprites for 2 unused enemies, which he refers to as hipster dudes. There is also this very cool unused world map concept. Early on in development, the team wanted every character from the books as bosses, enemies, NPCs, or playable characters. This means that there would have been mid-bosses in every stage before each Evil X fight. Unfortunately, most of these were cut, but I'll be covering the ones we know about as we move through the worlds. With that being said, let's hop in the warp pipe to World 1. The game was originally supposed to start with a moody high school flashback. This would later be simplified and used as one of the subspace stages instead. There also would have been a mid-level boss fight with Crash and the boys. The original plan for this level was for there to be a skateboard chase sequence down the handrail after the fight with Lucas, and this would have included RPM gauges in the HUD. However, this would have required a whole new sets of animation for each playable character, so it sadly had to go. Before we move on to World 3, there's something I want to clear up. At the end of World 2, after the fight with Lucas, you receive a skateboard item which does nothing. This has led some people to speculate that this might have been used in the chase down the rails after the fight. However, I don't think this is the case, as you getting the skateboard and being unable to use it is part of the joke. And in the comic, when Scott gets the skateboard, he specifically mentions how he didn't take the skateboard proficiency in grade 5, meaning he's unable to use it. There isn't a ton to cover with this level, as this was the first and only level that the team worked on for the 6 months that they were in Montreal, which is why they were able to keep Envy and Lynette as sub-bosses, on top of having Todd's levitating chase sequence, the bass battle, and the boss battle itself. This is why pretty much all of the other sub-bosses got cut from the game. However, there was at one point talk about having a second/alternate boss battle inside of Honest Ed's, with Todd magically assembling crazy weapons from all the junk around him. This world would have started with a beach level, like how Volume 4 of the book starts with Julie's birthday party at the beach. The characters from the NES game Super Spike V-Ball would have featured here as mid-bosses. Some of the beach concepts would later be worked into the game's dodgeball mode. After the beach area, there would have been a street section featuring a fight with actress Winifred Haley jumping out of her movie posters. This is a reference to the free Scott Pilgrim comic that was released on Free Comic Book Day in 2006. In this comic, Scott, Ramona, and Wallace are on their way to a movie, walking by posters for Winifred Haley's newest movie. The posters then come to life as multiple Winifred Haleys jump out of them to attack Scott. Before the fight with Roxy, Stéphane wanted players to cross through Ramona's house, before jumping down into her garden to face Roxy. He says that this is something he tried to keep in the game as long as possible, before finally having to cut it. This would have correlated directly with the books, as in the 4th volume, Scott is chased through Ramona's house by Knives' father, Mr. Chow. Julie's party originally started with an October/Halloween street-themed section, but it was cut. The twins' lair also got shortened quite a bit. In the final game, it's just the one floor. However, there were 2 whole floors of the lair that got cut. One floor would have been a basement dungeon, which would have been similar to the Temple of Doom area seen back in World 2. The second floor would have been a haunted mansion type area. On each floor, you would have encountered the energy dragons from the movie as sub-bosses, before the confrontation with the Katayanagi twins themselves. This level was originally going to be slightly longer, as there was supposed to be a progressional weather change from winter to spring to summer, and then to the eeriness of the cemetery section. Stéphane also states in his post that he thought it would have been nice if every playable character had their own Nega counterpart, similar to Scott and Nega Scott, so that every character would get to fight their own evils. However, this didn't make it past game design. This level was originally supposed to have a layer of cool stuff, as well as a bar section before the final fight with Gideon. There were also going to be more sceneries for the windows in the Techno base. Moving on to the final fight with Gideon, the developers knew that it wasn't entirely clear on where to attack Gideon when he is in his monster form. So they had a big bubble planned to go around the bottom of Gideon's torso, where all of the mutated evil X's are, in order to make things more clear to the player. However, its implementation was delayed constantly until it was eventually too late. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, please be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Thank you.